Fatuma, I ask you as you take a drink of water.
I'm like, oh, I am a little bit nervous, but I'm okay. Am I too loud from this? Okay, cool.
All right, great.
Perfect.
Fatuma, welcome to the Finding Meaning in Work podcast. So excited to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Although I've got to say we are missing your sister, Laurinda.
Yes,
who
unfortunately.
couldn't make it, but yeah, I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah, and I'm confident that I can represent for the both of us quite well.
Awesome. So to begin with, you're one of the founders of Collective Closets. For those who don't know, I wonder if you could paint us a picture of what that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Collective Closets is an apparel brand. We make women's wear. We get our fabrics from Kenya in Nairobi and we bring them to Australia and we make clothing. They're targeted to women because we're women. We like to make clothes for women. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's kind of our forte in terms of the clothes that we make. You know, me and my sister are both a little bit more shapely, I'd like to call us. Mm-hmm. And I think the clothes that we make are targeted to everyone, but like we definitely have, that's our vibe, to make people feel really powerful and to kind of let them express themselves through fashion.
Yeah.
And so our colours are not for the brave-hearted. Mm-hmm. They're bold, they're wild. We definitely have our own point of view of what we think fashion should look like, and it's all over our clothes. So
amazing.
It's definitely quite a different.
I mean, kind of what you're wearing today.
Yeah. I mean, they're still very classic silhouettes. You know, I think that fashion doesn't change all that time. Like every season or every year, couple of years, they kind of is a bit of repeat. But I think the way that we our approach makes it a little bit more, I'd say, timeless or quite individual. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. So maybe going back to your roots. So you were born in Angola, is that right?
No, I was born in Zambia, but my parents are from Angola.
Okay, yeah.
Which is like the east coast of Africa. Mm-hmm. And my mum loved to sew. Her and her friends went to boarding school, so she'd always had like really amazing clothes.
Yeah. And
I think also coming to like being a new migrant, I think lots of new migrants do this. They always make sure that your style and you present well. Yeah. And I grew up in a very like white suburb, so my mum felt extra pressure for us to present well.
Yeah.
So fashion was always something that we just was a thing that our family all did, you know. Yeah. My mum sewed and we used to sew as a family. I always say that we're like the Von Trapps of the sewing world. On a Saturday, if you came to our house, you'd definitely have like sewing machines out and fabric and we would definitely be sewing together. We all thought it was actually quite fun.
Did you sing together as well?
Probably. I wouldn't put it past us. But it was definitely weirdly something that we always grew up with. I don't know why. Like I remember sewing, my mum would sew our uniforms. Yeah. I would sew my own outfits. I definitely went to like fabric stores from a very young age. Yeah. I knew a way around a pattern from about, I don't know, 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you when you came to Australia?
I came to Australia when I was 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
quite young.
Yeah, I think that Australia is definitely a foundational part of my life because I've been here since I was 2. But I think that because I look very different, you kind of always get reminded that you're not really Australian, which is good in a way because then it makes sure that you're kind of really in touch with your heritage.
Yeah. Can I ask what spurred the move from?
I think my parents came, my dad came for work and then my mum was like, we might as well just try it. I think they came in like the very late 80s, very, like 1989. And Australia was very different. I think that what my mum was expecting to what she got was a bit of a shock. It was just so different, you know, the weather, everything about it. I can imagine, but my mum grew up in Angola, so it was colonized by the Portuguese. So my mum, like we grew up speaking Portuguese. My Portuguese is terrible now, so please don't try and quiz me. But I think that that's not too different. Like Portuguese culture in some of the way is not too dissimilar to Australian.
It's kind of Westernish. Yeah. I have some experience there because my mum came, or her family is from Portuguese part of India, which is Goa.
Oh, yes.
So
very similar.
So even we, growing up, I grew up in Mumbai.
Oh, nice.
So we did have quite a Western upbringing.
Yeah. And even when I'd hang out with, like, when my parents had their friends were all from different parts of Africa because we didn't speak an African language because we spoke Portuguese. We also felt a little bit excluded and like my mum would cook like Portuguese stews, not African food.
Yeah,
It was like Angola's so Portuguese. Like some colonies, they exist, but they're not so pronounced.
Yeah.
But in Angola, people love being like the jewel of it. So a lot of my life is quite Western already because of just the colonization of Angola.
Yeah. And then so, you know, coming from Angola, growing up in Melbourne, what was your early childhood like? Was it...
Yes. Interesting. I was recently unpacking this for another thing that I did recently. And I guess I'm the type of person that moves forward. Like I look at my life as a forward space. And going back, I was like, oh, that was a little bit more harder than I thought. And now that I've sunk into it, I'm like, oh, it was quite challenging because our family was one of the only, like 1989, there was a couple of waves of African immigrants before then, but not a lot. And a lot of them actually went back to Ghana or Nigeria. So then the group of people that had come when my parents had come, they were all from different parts of Africa as well. And everyone was a bit spread out. And so like I was saying to my son recently, like everywhere we would go, we would get stopped. Like to Coles, I would get stopped, like our family would be stopped and be like asked, like, where are you from? Or people would touch us, which I found really interesting. Yeah, like every day. Yeah. And so like when I was saying to you before, where people say to me, oh, you've been here since you were 2. But for a good 20 years, we felt very different because every single day when we stepped out of our house, we were reminded that we were very different. That doesn't happen anymore. And it always is like, you know, my son walks out in the world and nobody's touching him or asking him where he's from. Or people saying like, where are you really from? Like, didn't matter if I sounded like this. People always wanted to know. So it was really, really difficult, especially at school. Like I remember me and my sister for a while were the only brown kids because my older sister was already in high school. And we struggled. Like it was really challenging at times, very, very challenging. People weren't very, very nice. And I think that also your parents overcompensate, so you could never do anything bad. We never swore. If we dropped rubbish, my mum would be like, oh my God, people will think we're animals. So it was very, very like sometimes a bit too curated, I think.
So I'm guessing you were a good student?
I wasn't very good though. But I think the thing about it was there's an expectation. So originally I wanted to become a florist. And my mum was like, no. Like there's an expectation that you have to go to university. And that you have to pursue something quite, I don't know, what is it? Like a profession. And I think that's kind of like that migrant kind of point. So forever I was like, I don't get this work, but I have to get it because I have to go to university. And so you kind of start to pick up, but I don't think it came natural to me. I think that now I look at my life now, it's probably more in line with what I imagined and wanted it to be.
But when you were in school, were there any subjects or were you into anything outside of school that you were really into?
I think in primary school I did find it very hard, challenging just to go to school, to be honest, because I really did not like it. I think as I got older I did find my voice. I did enjoy a lot more of the creative stuff. I wasn't into art, weirdly, because I don't think my drawing skills till this day are great. But I did really like the idea of, and maybe this is why it's such a big part of our brand, like politics and history and kind of that voice, debating. I really found that. I tried to get into maths, but it really wasn't for me, but I enjoyed it. Like I liked the challenge of it. And so now that I reflect to it, I think I did like a bit more challenging subjects and also subjects that broke the world down into a bit, like made it feel like it was a bit bigger than it was. Especially with the lack of technology back in those days. You can kind of feel like the world is really, really small. And so I kind of loved...
to a library and look up things.
I loved like encyclopedias and atlases, because I think that they broke the world up into this bigger place. And I think that when I think of the brand now, I love that it feels global, and because I think that that's always been a bit of a mindset as well for us.
And then, so when it came to going to uni, how did you make that decision? Like, what did you...
Well, it was made for me.
Okay.
It was. I mean, I love it. Till this day, I think that when I'm like 60, I'll become a florist. Like, it's not... It's definitely not out of the realm of my professions.
I mean, there's a very floral sensibility to collective closets.
Oh, Well, it's just been my passion. Even like watching Burke's Backyard and knowing like all the plant names.
Wow.
And I used to watch it every Friday with my mum, and I can still be like, oh, that's a what is it, an azalea or I don't know, a petunia. Like it's still 60. I think I'm going to transition into my floristry life.
Good old Don Buck.
I know, the kids are missing out on John Burke.
It's a blast from the past. Yeah.
Well, when it came to university, I think what I tended to do was, I think I tried to overcompensate. I really definitely had to go to university because my mum was definitely like, you have to go. And I was also in a situation where I wanted to prove that I was actually really smart, because I wasn't. And so I studied business.
Yep.
And I still to this day don't understand why I made this decision. Like, I specialized in supply chain management.
Wow.
Yeah. And once I was in it, I realized, oh my God, no. But I finished the degree and then started going into work and thought, oh, maybe I made a mistake.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the good thing about it's business. So you can kind of, look at it from many points of view.
Yeah. And saying that, so we just have a drill at the background.
Good stuff. I was like, how are they going to edit
Dan's sweating in the corner over there.
Sorry, Dad.
But yeah, I think it sounds like it's a good, I think, maybe generic set of skills that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that if I've got a 7-year-old, but I always say, like, if he didn't know what he wanted to do, I'd probably let him do a gap year. But if he was really struggling, I would say just do a business degree. Yeah. I wouldn't even say arts, I'd say business, because at least it gives you some practical principles to kind of like go into the world, like a really kind of how the world works, macros, just basic accounting, like little things that can't hurt you, I guess.
Exactly.
And can only like further your curiosity.
Sure. What if he wants to be a florist?
Oh my God, I would open up a floristry together.
Yeah, wow.
I'd love that.
That's awesome.
I would love that. My son's like deeply passionate about music. So he's 7.
Oh, wow.
He's into like 70s rock.
No way.
Like
that's our genre.
Really?
Yeah.
Like the Beatles. He knows what Ringo has for breakfast.
No.
He can tell you the first album, where they produced it,
that's
in what
crazy.
year. He's got like over 100 vinyl records.
It's funny, when I was his age, I was crazy about Elvis.
Oh, so there you go.
Elvis and the
Beatles. So I'd be like rapt that he wanted to do something else but music, because I'm well, that can't be floristry, please.
I mean, that would be a fascinating thing now, especially the music industry is such a dynamic thing right now. It's changing so quickly.
Yeah, a bit scary for me. I'm do a business degree and let's open a florist together.
Yeah. So then, so I also want to talk a little bit about Laurinda, if that's okay.
So then, the interesting thing is my mum then came back to Australia. She was a teacher in Angola and then retrained to become a nurse. And so I think part of the care is such a big part of our family. Respect, all of those values, which I think is like underpinning in collector closets, is something that was always been a thing. So when Laurinda was wanting to work out what she was doing, she just wanted to be a nurse like my mum.
Wow.
So then my mum was a nurse, my sister was a nurse, and till this day, like Laurinda still will do a bit of like frameworking. Even when she's thinking about going to Kenya for a little while, she's like, oh, how could I put some of that in there? So caring and really that philosophy of giving back to your community, looking out for other people, has always been such a big thing in my family. And she's always loved it, and it's something that like we've always done. So she was a nurse for many years. She was a unit manager. Wow. And she loves it. Like even now she'll be like, oh, I think I need to, to get back in.
That's so amazing. But also I think it teaches you a different style of leadership, I think.
Yes.
Because one of our previous guests, he was a nurse for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And then now he's the CEO of a electrical training college. He brings that holistic sense of leadership to his new role.
Amazing.
As a CEO of a electrical training college.
Yeah.
So the reason I brought that up is it kind of sounds something similar to what maybe Laurinda's bringing to.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that because there's two of us, I always think that the skill set has to be not that, like the same. I think that's why I think the brand's probably a bit more dynamic, because there are two different skill sets coming into it. Yeah. And sometimes it's a great thing, like it's magic, because we're both kind of coming from things really differently,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's a disaster
Yeah.
because like I'm like, but what about this mass still has to mass? Like
Yeah.
that doesn't, you know, love that, but like we can't spend our money on giving it away if we can't afford to make this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really good that we both are a bit different. And I always say to her, like, or she always says to me when we're ever in a bit of conflict or in a trying to find resolution, is like, well, we both have different brains. Like we're coming from it with both the best of intention
Yep.
and the best way to do it, but just coming from it from like two different angles.
Yeah, wow. So speaking of, you can answer this any way you like. Maybe it's skills, attitudes, mindsets, but how do you complement each other? Yeah.
Exactly that. I think I can be a bit more, a little bit more technical, not as technical as like some people, but like a bit more technical. I think because I do have that business, especially like before this, I did work in lots of spreadsheets, timelines, you know, considering all of it to be able to then give to another team. That's kind of been my head. I can't actually get around that. And then it's good because she brings a bit more of a free-flowing part to the business, a bit more very creative. She'll put together all the mood boards. She'll bring together like the imagery together, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think together it works really well.
Yeah.
And I think also because we're sisters, the foundation of where we've come from is the same.
Yeah.
So like I said, there's always like this love part to it. Like
Sure.
I don't want to ever do things for the sake of doing it. We want to do it for the sake of purpose.
Sure.
And because that's what we grow up with. It's not, you know, we're both on the same page
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
It's just that our brains are kind of wired differently. And I think that's the best. I think that I would find it hard to work with someone that was exactly like me.
Sure,
and I don't think you do, or your message is bold enough because you're coming in from the same spot, which means that you don't have enough time to lean back and actually understand what like how bigger or the potential of how the message could be, because you're only coming up from this one little spot.
Absolutely.
So I like that we're both on different sides. So it means that we kind of cover,
Yeah.
you know, half of it together.
But you had, I suppose, an amazing beginning in the sense that the both of you were there with your mum sewing.
Yeah.
Maybe singing, I don't know.
Yeah. And also I think because we realize like I mean, the good thing about that as well is that we know how much hard work it is.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? There's no illusion here. Like if we want our business to look like this is what it takes. I don't need to pretend to her, like we know that this is what it needs. Like hard work is the biggest thing, consistency, and I think it's easier. Also, like, you know, we're both mums.
Yep.
Also having each other just support each other in this. So I know that when I took time to have my son, that there was no resentment there because she knew like, oh, it'll be my turn. So it's a lot of like back and forth, give and take.
Yep.
And I think that that's really big in a business. I've seen some of other businesses that have failed was when the owners started off on the same trajectory, but life is life.
Yes, yeah.
And then the other person couldn't relate
Sure.
to that person's life circumstance, whether it's negative or positive.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's just getting married and you get swept up in all of the wedding stuff and then you all of a sudden your business becomes secondary.
Exactly, yeah.
If the other person can't relate,
Yeah.
it's hard. But when you're committed to the same goal and understand that life happens and it's my job to support her,
Yep.
not only as my business partner, but as a sister, then it changes the game as well.
Sure. So when you and her initially had that conversation about starting a business, was it a natural conversation to have?
Yes.
Because-
Because we had
yeah.
we had a small business before.
Okay.
So we had this business called, what is it called? Grandma's Finest.
Grandma's Finest.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Because so what had happened was we didn't grow up with a lot of money, and so like my mum would give us like money and we'd pull the money together to buy all of our clothes. And then we started to get into vintage and making our own stuff. And we realized like if we bought lots of vintage stuff and then altered it, then we could, you know, get more value for our money in our limited resources. And then weirdly that just became a business because like everyone would be like, oh my God, where did you get this from? Where did you get that from? So then we started a vintage label that was just about upcycling.
Yep.
But then what was happening was we were buying so much stuff to upcycle, but then maybe like 10 styles were like only selling.
Yeah.
So I had when I say I had a room full of clothing, I had a room full of clothing. And so then we were like, oh, damn it. We put all this like work into putting it online. And back then there was no Shopify. There was just we built it ourselves. We had a eBay. Like it was it's so labor intensive for one item because every single item's different because it's vintage. It was just a lot of output and just like you were selling it for like $50.
Yeah.
Did a lot of markets as well.
Yeah.
So then we realized then that we needed to make our own.
Yeah.
And then my sister was getting married in Kenya and we weren't sure what our point of view would be different. We're like, we didn't want to make again. We didn't want to make clothes for the sake of making clothes. So we were like, what would be our point of difference? And so we were in Nairobi in Kenya. And we're like, oh my God, look at all these colors, look at these prints. I just haven't seen those before. Yeah. And I think optimism, because we didn't think about the macros. Like I wasn't like, how much money do you have? We were like, let's just do it.
You didn't bring the spreadsheet out.
We didn't bring the spreadsheet. And then we started to investigate it. And because our minds were just like this little, we'll just sell to our friends. It'll be a bit more of a hobby. We didn't actually think about the potential of how big it could be or how, we didn't have a 5-year business plan, I can tell you that.
Okay, so maybe jumping around a bit. So we said, okay, so you studied business at uni.
Yeah.
And then what was your first job or first view of work?
Yeah, I got a job the next day after I finished uni. Because
go you,
because logistics is actually quite employable, which I had no idea. Straight
Supply
away.
chain is, even now it's hugely in demand.
It is. So like I finished on a Friday. I got a job on the Monday. I was like, oh God, maybe this is. And I went into shipping, international shipping. And it was just interesting. Like in that job, I learned 2 things, that lots of people had been there for 20 plus years.
Okay.
And so it was like one of Australia's first shipping liner companies. And then it was like owned by the government first. And then it got sold off. So you had these people that were there for like 20, 30 years, which at the time, like when you're 21, you're like 20 years, but they were all just counting down to retire. Yeah. And I remember being like really like shocked that people weren't excited. They were just like another day. And that quickly for me was like, okay, if I don't really think about what I want to do, I could end up like that. And then, I mean, they were great people, so I'm not here to say whether it was bad or not. It was just that mindset of it. So I wasn't there for very long, and then I moved on to Coca-Cola, which is like the total opposite. People were there for a very long time, but it was full passion.
Wow.
Yeah, people loved working there. I went to this like gallery, or what is it, like one of their days where they have all the employees at like the MCG, they hire it all out. And they have like people speaking, and it was like people, I remember looking around going, oh my God, there would have been like half a stadium of people just so passionate about the work that they did. And that was also like, oh, like, do these values align with you? It's an amazing company, 100%, but it just didn't speak to my soul. So then I moved on from there. And then I began my career at Aesop. And that was like a total alignment for me. So, purpose and product together.
So, I mean, it's so funny, just the 2 examples you gave, the shipping company and Coca-Cola. It's almost like 2 sides of the same coin in that sometimes people are just there because it's just what they're used to. It's just routine. And it's very hard to get out of the routine. But on the other side is people are there because of the whiz-bang culture. And, so it's almost like there's so much happening that you think, are we silly to give this up?
100%. And like I had moments, it's so interesting because I mean, it's Coca-Cola, so there's lots of controversy. Some people may think about the brand. But actually what I thought was really interesting was the career projection there was insane. Like they wanted you to be capable, but they wanted you to be capable and move up. They, at that time when I was there, the commitment to sustainability, I know people might not, consider Coca-Cola and sustainability hand in hand, but at that time they were trying to make the bottles thinner. It was really, really interesting for a company of that size to be, before it was even like a bigger thing, they were really, and I think because the way Coca-Cola Amatil set out, so every region in Coca-Cola, every single Coca-Cola in a country is separate. So then like what happens is it's like a big global Coca-Cola world where like the UK will be like sustainability and it pushes the rest of the regions to then kind of keep up with that. So really when I was there, I actually found it quite fascinating about the way that they did business, the way that they cared about their employees. And I would say that like it's lots of businesses, like I don't know if you were thinking about it as a career, it's actually quite rewarding in that sense. Like I remember the CEO would come through, it was a bit like it was really interesting. Like I mean, I think that like, I've got lots of friends that stayed there for many years, and you could definitely build a career and quite a successful career there. And I could see why the people that worked there for 20 years were happy. They weren't like, oh my god, I don't think people talk about retirement.
It's Monday.
People were like, it really was. It kind of had that Google element. Like there was a bar there, and because all of the Coke and all the alcohol is all free because it's all owned by the same company.
Oh, of course, all the Coke you can drink.
I remember you had to go to football days and you'd get like a box at the MCG. You had to go. Like it was like stuff like that. I didn't like football, so it was a bit of a chore for me. But it actually was really interesting. But it was before you had that Google cool life. They kind of did it in their own way. Not as cool, but if you think about it, quite interesting.
No, for sure. I think I relate in the sense because I worked for IBM.
Oh, there you go,
And it was a similar experience in the sense I learned a lot. They had done, being a big company that they are, they'd done a lot of work on their culture. So the culture was really good.
Yes.
And also, and you meet interesting people, you meet smart people.
Yes.
And that, I think, grows you as a person.
100%. And capable. I remember the head of like supply chain once sat me down and was like, I'm going to mentor you through because I feel like you've got all of the attributes. And I don't know why. I must have been like 23 and like, I don't care about this. But in retrospect, like now that I look at it, that's such an amazing moment for someone so high up to want to mentor groups of people that he thought had potential. And I don't know why he said no, because like his insight and he'd worked globally. It was such a special moment. I just don't think that I took it. I just wasn't ready for it. You know, you got to be sometimes ready for opportunities.
Sure.
And at the time, I just wasn't ready for it. But I'm very thankful. But it did put confidence in me. It is a very confidence-building environment.
And that's the main thing, I think. I think even in my experience, whether starting a business or going for it's all about confidence and how you present yourself from that.
100%.
But so with Coca-Cola, what was... You mentioned, values. Like, what was grating against who you were or your values? Or...
Oh, I mean, because it is Coca-Cola, like as a company, in the sense that they were still putting out, they did more sustainability than most companies would ever at their own pace without global pressure. At the same time, we are like making water and products and like even their product range didn't really sit well with me. It wasn't just aligned with my values. I mean, we weren't talking about anything else as well, but a couple of things. It just like, and I also was wanting more for myself. I kind of dreamt about having a career that I could be more myself. Because it still is quite like, I don't know, it was still very white and very male driven as well. I just couldn't find my sweet spot there.
And then Aesop came along.
And then that ticked all my boxes. So for like 10 years and I really loved it. I think the culture there, especially when I started, I don't know what it's like anymore now, but it was really, really, everyone was kind of the same. It felt like you found your tribe. Everyone had the same mindset. Everyone was young. Everyone did really interesting things. The owners at the time wanted more from you. They wanted you to think outside in this way that I'd never, ever been asked to. They would have all of these amazing speakers come from National Geographic or like Market Lane Coffee and do this like a mandatory, like, I don't know, coffee where they'd come in and all the employees had to sit down and your world would just open up.
Wow, that's so cool.
And the industries would be competing, like they weren't beauty. Sometimes you'd have, but very, there'd be cycling companies that were, starting up from, a little tiny place in LA, just all this stuff that was just so mind blowing. I was challenged every single day. The literature you had to read, they strongly encouraged a lot of reading. So, you know, back to all the Aesop classics, like
like the fables.
The fables.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's quotes everywhere.
Yeah.
Like it really made you kind of expand your mind as well as work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like every Friday you'd have drinks with everyone.
Yeah.
They put on drinks. You'd have a big family lunch. At the time, there would have been like maybe 50 to 80 people at the head office. And every Thursday we'd eat together. They would set the table. There'd be candles, and they'd switch all the lights on.
Are they hiring?
Listen, I think it's different now because I think the people said they only do it monthly now. They're huge now.
That sounds like a dream.
Yeah, it was very supportive. Like it was very nurturing. I would say for your soul.
So besides that, so you were there for 10 years.
Yes.
What was some of the things that stick in your memory? I mean, besides what you just described, or maybe, you know, opportunities that came up, or could be, you know, the way you grew as a person, or is there anything come to you?
Well, I think that's the reason why I started Collected Closets, because I was always around people that had really interesting mindsets, and I was around lots of companies or people adjacent. I realized that I could, just hearing Dennis and Suzanne, when they had the business, how they started it, I think it broke down all of the barriers of what you think a big business is going to be. It also kind of gave me the way to treat people, because they gave so much back to the employees in terms of, you know, what you could have in terms of just being nice and kind, even down to the emails. Like you'd have to always write, like, dear blah blah, I trust that you are well. Like it was always that well-being. I think it kind of changed, and till this day there are things that I've learned from that job that I do in my everyday. You know, I still feel uncomfortable using a blue pen. I'm always still, because the foundations of it was really strong. And also I found like some of my closest friends that I'm still really close with today. So, like I reckon about 20 of my friends I found from there, and they've all worked at different places and we're still friends. And I think it's because it built this mindset of people. And I think the qualities that they picked, maybe the person wouldn't be as highly skilled, but they'd have this one attribute. And because we all had that one attribute, it connected us all together.
Yeah. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, really well. Listen, I don't know what it's like now. When I worked there. And also, like, when I said I was going to start Collected Closets to them, they were like, do it. So, like, I started the business 5 years in. So I went from full-time. I took a year off to do business management. I came back and they were like, yes, come back. And then I worked part-time while I built it. And then it wasn't till it was in a really good place that I said, listen. And they were like, we understand. Go.
That's I mean, that's all the hallmarks of like a great business to work for, really.
Yeah, no, I really did. I really had a great time there when I was there.
And so maybe coming back to Collective Closets now. So when did you know that you had something here, that, you know, that you've got something in the making? That
I think it was a combination of things. I think it was a lot of also, I look back at it, I was like, let's just open up a shop. Like, there was a lot of stuff that probably I hadn't thought through and we had. And I think that's the best thing about it. Like, it was a business is a business that I feel like you can just do anything with. And I don't know, maybe I learned that in my last couple of jobs, that you could just give it a go. I think that I knew we had something when we were just selling out of everything. Like we'd say, oh, well, we'll make, you know, I don't know, 50 of this, and it would sell out. Or like the first day we'd launch, people would wake up at like 6 a.m. Like I say, the first day, or at 5 or 6 a.m. And I was like, wow. Or like when we were selling to lots of different countries, there was a time where we were shipping out lots of orders to like Japan and the US. Then I kind of was like, oh, wow. I mean, the figures also help, because you're like, oh yeah, we actually are, you know, finally able to do this and that.
Spreadsheets are looking good.
The spreadsheets are looking good. And also when we realized that we didn't have to focus, like we could do things that weren't just product based, because we had the budget to do it. So like put on campaigns that were a little bit more, that cost a lot more, but like it would be having deeper conversations. And maybe even when we had our store where customers would come in and you'd have these conversations with people, and you're like, oh wow, you know, this is way more than I thought it was going to be.
And I think that's one thing I noticed was, so I first came across both you and Laurinda at the Creative Mornings talk. and also kind of following you since then. What strikes me is you have a very strong sense of community, not obviously your story, but also with your customers.
Yeah.
Because there's quite a few of them there that
Yeah, that's true. They were very collecting closets, and I was like, and because we were going through this hiatus of trying to understand what we were doing and also like work out our supply chain, we kind of hadn't done very much, to be honest. Like we'd kind of done a few things to kind of make sure that we were present, but we hadn't done a collection. So when we did that, I was like, oh, who knows how many people come? Plus, it's in the morning before work. I was like, I wouldn't even do that.
8 a.m.
Yeah, and then we got there, there was so many people. I was shocked. I was like, oh, wow. And it's like, I've got to go to work now. I'm like, oh my God, that's insane. But, you know, it's probably a testament to Sally as well and the series that she put together.
Yeah. But it's more about how did you start building that community? Was, as you were building Collective Closets, was telling your story part of the journey, or how did you...
So with every single collection that we do, we start off with like a story about why we're doing it. And that's just been something that we've always done. I don't know. I think that maybe because in our lives or the way that we operate or the brands that we love are the ones that do that. Like I want to understand why I'm buying this. Do I need another top? You know, the things that we like try and tell it in a story, like whether we're educating. And a lot of it is because we do want to share our culture, or if we're using a item or something from someone else, we want to tell their stories. So often it's just because we want to share something. We want them to get knowledge. Especially like, you know, being African women, we have a duty of care as well. And Lauren and I have always felt that. So we wouldn't get all of our fabrics from Kenya, but there was a time where we were getting them from like Senegal, like the summer, winter, and that's not our culture. So even being like, even though Lauren's husband is Kenyan, but we're not, we've had a very big sense of responsibility of actually telling that story because it's our duty of care here. So I think that's also a big one because we're so keen for people to understand how, like, you know, the process or who these people are or information about the artisans, then it's been the foundation of our business. And even in our new collection, like we are going to be telling the stories about more sustainability, not that we're focusing on sustainability as the thing, but because with this range it's so limited, we want people to understand what dead stock means and you know, what is it like to kind of, and we're mixing the fabrics together as well, so what that story is and what the meaning is towards that. And it's not just about sell. I mean, I feel like we live in a culture now where it's just about sell.
I think
everyone's screaming at you, and I think we want to be like careful and considered, but still.
Sure. I think especially, I mean, I'm not a fashion expert by any means, but that wasn't supposed to be funny, Dan. But I think, especially like with, you know, fast fashion now, there's so much of, just in the industry, there's so much of waste generated. And I think maybe, you know, not the sustainability conversation is getting more and more important.
It is and it isn't. Like, it's so funny, like, because Lauren and I had this little hiatus, is that what I can never say the word.
Hiatus?
Yeah, hiatus. For like, I think about 12 months. It's kind of, which I think we needed to stop, because I think that sometimes what happens is you build a business and you go, and the world is changing around you, which is actually what happened. And you don't have enough time to respond because you're busy in that go sense. And when we had the time to pause, we always like were Melbourne made with a sustainable focus. It wasn't who we 100% were, but everything that we did was back to that. We realized that all the brands that had, you know, existed in this space didn't, and people didn't, consumers actually didn't care. And if anything, because of economics and the way that the world was at the time, interest rates were up, people were losing jobs, that money is the biggest thing that was underpinning people's decisions. And so like, if they had to pick between sustainability and price, you'd get maybe 1% of that would continue on that process. A lot of the people were like, sorry. You know what I mean? And we felt that. And then when we're looking at brands that were similar, even to this day, we're like trying to work out pricing and look at what's happening around us, because the competition and our competitors have changed because so many have left. We are up against these other brands that don't like have a sustainable statement, definitely. No one in this day has a fashion business that doesn't have sustainable. Even Alibaba does, you know what I mean? Whether you keep true to that. And I don't, because consumers aren't also asking and focusing about it. Like, think about it, luxury is the biggest.
Yes.
You know, the Gucci's and the Louis Vuittons, they are huge. They're making more money than they ever have. They're not talking about sustainability.
No.
We don't care about where Hermes is getting their crocodile. But you know what? The Birkin bag is got a waiting list of thousands of people. So I think that so it's like they're not being held accountable. And you as a small business are getting more and more accountable or being held to a higher esteem for it. So we were like, oh my God, this world's definitely changed. The players are different. And so in this year especially, we've had to do some like hard thinking about what that means in our business, what we want and how many people are willing to actually plug into it. Sure. If it's just unaffordable. Some people love it, but like if you can't afford to buy it, you've got to buy eggs. Apparently eggs are very expensive at the moment. Then you got to buy your eggs, you know. So it's actually, it's a definitely a different, it's a juggle, I think. It's a mental juggle about where you put your effort in this equation.
Yeah. Because I think another thing, thinking about fashion is that, how do I phrase this? It's more than just, say, wearing clothes. There's a lot of your identity invested in it. There's a lot of emotional weight behind that decision.
Yes.
And I think, maybe with you, it's bringing that to the fore. Like, this is who we are as not just people, but this is our identity. This is our culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I think it's like, we've always done that. So that's not really like I think that we'll always have to do that because I think that, like I said, we've got a responsibility as well because of where we get our fabrics from and what we're sharing and what we're celebrating. Yeah. It's from culture, from other cultures and making sure that people are aware of it. But I think it's also just being aware. Like, I think that this 12 months has taught us so much. Yeah. Like, I actually think it's the best thing that we could have happened, to be honest, just having a pause and reevaluating the values of the world right now and adapting to it in the best way that we can. So what you'll find is that there's a lot of heart and soul that will always be, but like we're definitely moving to Kenya to manufacture. We're definitely looking at other ways to do it, to bring it in. And as well as for your customers, like if your customers are having a hard time, you are not trying to abandon them and be like, oh, well, let's find new customers. It's about trying to re-engage and maybe think about the pieces that they can afford to have a little bit of collector closets. And then also search for customer bases that also will align with that. So I think it's about evolving, and I think the world is about evolution.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we're trying to make sure that we have this community, we're actually trying to address what they need as well.
Yeah. And speaking of that, when you first started Collective Closets, who were your first customers?
Well, it's interesting because we thought it was just going to be all of our African girlfriends buying it. Turns out it really wasn't.
Oh, wow, okay.
But it wasn't because, I mean, like, you have a handful of friends. How much stuff can they possibly buy? Yeah. I think that what people really liked about our approach that then transcended race or culture is that it's a point of difference and that it is about women celebrating women. So no matter who you are, you can find something in our collection that will help you feel really strong in that. So weirdly, as the brand evolved in the years, the women that we were finding were strong women in careers, but that wanted their own personality to be shown. Wow. So we'd have like, I don't know, we have lots of doctors wear us because being a doctor, you've got to be quite important, clinical, quite professional, but they're fun. Like, doctors are fun. Like, we've got a lot of like women of color that are doctors, and they're like, their personality is still their personality. So the only way they can show their personality at work is through their clothes. Yeah. And teachers the same thing. Like, you are around kids. There's a level of professionalism that sits in there, but there you can kind of show who you are by what you wear. So we found that was the thing that connected all these women.
That's
that
fascinating.
They had these we would wear us to conferences, and like people would send us emails being like, I wore this to this UN conference because the messaging still needs to be strong, but I get to show off who I am or my boldness, or the other way around, I needed some extra courage. And I know that your suit brings me to that mindset. So then that
That
became
is
the
so
woman.
cool.
Yeah. So weirdly, like we'd start to compile this like Rolodex of these women, and obviously they would be wearing it. So then all these other people that would attend the conference would then come to us. And like, I saw blah blah wearing that suit to this. Or I remember someone wore I can't remember their name, sorry, but like someone wore us to Parliament once, and people were like, and she sent me this photo. We were like, oh my god!
So it's like
So it's
influencer marketing without being influencer marketing.
yeah, 100%. But I think that we're lucky because the women that have engaged in our brands have been such dynamic, really, really supportive. So then they've passed us on. I think we've built our brands through other women celebrating our brand and giving us chances, whether it's like Lucy from the Design Files or the people at Broadsheet. Like it's always been women being like, oh, this is a really strong message. We need to amplify that. So we've been lucky in that sense as well.
That's amazing. And was that a surprise to you that you were able to like cross barriers?
Yeah, oh my god, of course. I'm forever. But I mean, as well as in my head, I'm like, I'm still just doing it for my friends. And then it's like just my friends have become bigger and more influential and like the network. But these are still like, and they become friends. So they're not just like colleagues or people that are helping us out. They're actually become the relationships that I've had with most of the people have actually then become actual friendships.
Sure. So then just touching on Laurinda, was it tough for her to move from nursing to...
Not really. Because I think that she's always kind of done it in some kind of level outside of it. I mean, there's two of us. Her life is a bit different to the way, like, there's always been one person leading it at all times versus the two of us. And she's always kind of wanted to keep her registration. So it's always been there in elements, to be 100% honest.
Sure.
So no.
Okay, yeah. So maybe thinking of where you are today, is there a favorite failure, or is there something that went wrong but you learned the most from? Or
yeah, I mean, there's been so many, but if I think about it now, I always think that there's no such things as failures. They're just things that there are lessons.
Yep.
And I think that like if I look at our brand in the next 2 years, it's going to be better because of all the things that we've had to do.
Sure.
So like we're excited to manufacture and move to Kenya for this part, because I think that is something that's necessary for not just like keeping it affordable, but also for like empowering, which was always the intended, what is it, like the intention of the business. And been able to kind of really tell deeper stories. So I look at this pause, or like the stopping of it for a little while, as a really, like, I think we would have been in a really bad situation if we kept producing for the sake of producing, like, maybe taking on more like debt that we wouldn't have been able to work out unless we stopped. We were at the space where we were like, oh, there's nothing to lose here. There's nothing keeping us. Let's stop. Let's understand what we're doing, and then making sure that process is more concise, more clear, and more intentional. And I think also it's like sometimes you can lose sight of what the intention is, because you kind of get into this big cycle of you have to produce, you have to, and just having the freedom. I mean, you start your own business to be your own boss and to make your own decisions, and sometimes it's easily forgotten when you feel like you've got the sense of responsibilities, whether it's employees or a lease or this is kind of this mistake or lesson has kind of taught us to always stop and understand if the intentions are still the same as you intended, and how far have you gone off the course. To recalibrate. So I don't believe in, I'm a big believer in not like thinking it's a failure. It's just more like lesson, and how do you then factor that into
your path forward, really?
And your process.
Were there any like resources that, maybe resources is a boring word, but maybe something that's helped you, like a book or a mentor or or something like that that inspired you?
We're really lucky because from the early inceptions of it, we've always realized that we didn't know everything. Like from get-go, we're like, oh, we just don't know everything. How are we going to be able to get this knowledge? Because you're running like all areas of the business. And we started, I don't even know what it's called because it's so long ago. We started to go to these like free business, like sessions that were in the city. I can't remember who what they were called, but we started to just go up there because we're like, okay, we'll just get basic. We can't afford like a full marketing analyst. Let's go. And then we met our current business coach, Fiona.
Okay.
And she was doing these free talks, and we just went to them, and then we realized, okay, started to do all the stuff that she was saying. She's got a really good book called Passion and Purpose.
Oh, okay.
And that's how we kind of started to kind of build it through a little bit more expertise.
Yep.
And then also just like finding out, or that was the biggest game changer for us, to be honest, because we had a business coach then, because then we started to go to her free sessions. We started to go to more free sessions. And then when we got to a point where we could afford it, we then started to engage in business coaching, planning, understanding the importance of it. If you want to grow, not your knowledge is your knowledge, and in order to expand it, you either need people to tap in. Then we started to just have consultants, so people that would come in, or freelancers that would come in and build something for us, and we could see that. So because of that, I think that then has changed our business a lot. But that Passion and Purpose book was so good. I'll have to give you the link so you can.
Please, and we put it in the notes. Of
Definitely. And I think it's about learning. So then because of that, then we'd just always realize that you have to learn the more. So the podcast, I listen to a lot of podcasts, like way too many podcasts. Whether it's like Diary of a CEO, till this day, the other day I listened to that Mr. Beast episode. And I was oh my God, I'm forever thinking that if you have, or even there's a really good one where they do Acquired. They just tell you the story. Acquired. Oh my God, so good. So I'm forever always listening to even your podcast. I was doing a few episodes of that. Like I think it's always expanding your mind, and also like understanding how other people do it. There's always like proof in the pudding.
There's an amazing episode that Acquired did on Taylor Swift.
Oh.
Have you heard that?
No, I listen to the ones because some of them are very long.
I
listen to the ones that I'm like definitely very passionate. One of them went for like the MS one that went for like I don't know 3 or 4 hours. I was like
This Taylor Swift one is about 3 hours.
long,
but it's so fascinating.
Oh really?
From a business perspective,
I'm gonna have to listen to that one because she is a mighty businesswoman.
But it's also, I think, if I can compare you to, it was starting with community. Like the reason why she became popular is really initially when she started off, she had this real relationship with her fans. That's continued on.
And you can see I'm not a big Taylor Swift fan just because her music is not for me. But one of the things that I can admire from her is it does look like it's a very like give and take relationship to her fans. She looks like she gives a lot in terms of whether it's free music. I don't know. It's like it looks like they feel like there's an exchange here that isn't just mandatory, and I think that makes her like really powerful in that sense, because I don't think enough businesses do it. I don't think enough. That's why whenever I'm on Instagram, businesses are yelling at you, but they're like it's just a one way.
Exactly.
They forget that like it has to be a exchange
or
of
communication.
Two. It is like if there's times where customers will say to us like whether they're going through a financial situation or they can't, or they they put on some weight and they're not confident in their body. We would just put out like collective conversations, which is just a series that we used to do monthly, highlighting different women, and they'd just be like, thank you. Or just advice, like thank you for giving me something, because I can't engage with your brand right now in a clothing way, but I can engage in it like on this other side. Whether it's just even a playlist, which is so easy. They're like, yes, I listened to 5 songs while I'm on a run. Like it's a give and take without it always being. Even for a while, we would say to customers like, oh, you can't afford collector closets this range, that's fine. Why don't you bring back something that you that isn't quite right, and we can repair it for you. Like, still engaging in something that is a give and take. I think that's something that's been really strong for us as well. So.
I think that's something that's really missing and it's something that's also maybe not easy to teach, in that it has to come from the sense of generosity almost. In that, I'm starting a business, but I really want this relationship
to be mutual.
So this podcast is about, finding meaning in work.
Yes.
When I asked that question, how do you what does meaningful work mean to you? How would you answer that?
I thought about this in lots of ways, and my mind's a bit like, whoa. Well, recently I was just answering a question for someone just today actually, for someone else, and they asked a really similar question, and I actually thought about it from a bigger point of view. Like, obviously I'm a mum, and it's one of the things that I'm like extremely grateful for. And the way that I shape my business is through the shaping of the future that I want my son to have. And so when I think about meaningful work, everything that we do, anything I will go on to do, is always about building a better future or better legacy, whether it's like, you know, sustainability, but maybe it's just about like putting out content that is telling stories or making people feel proud about where they're from, or doing something from a different point of view that adds to the element of the good of the world. And because I have that on my left shoulder, always like, oh my God, I wonder how this will impact Arlo, then it means that everything I do, everything that we do as a brand is based on those merits.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's always been like that for us, but I didn't understand it till I had him 100%, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to make sure that we're putting out positive messaging for brown women, representing these stories, representing hard work, changing the perception. People would be like, is this cultural appropriation? I'd be like, no, because we want to make sure that like people associate African fabrics as the same as Indian silk or Japanese. Like, we want it to be the same. If we can celebrate those cultures and those textiles, why can't we just do the same here? And because I have this like, you know, I don't know, like purpose to forever change that perception, it then comes with like a, you know, like a real push for the brand. So the way I think about my work is not selling clothes, is about pushing forward a movement, you know? And even like we've had lots of women come to me, women of colour, younger girls at the time, who again, their parents have come from like a migrant situation where they just want them to be doctors and lawyers, and they've been able to show their mum like, what about collector closets? And their parents would be like, oh my God, there's a brand that does this. And, you know, they've been able to speak there or showcase at the NGV. And then because whenever you can see it, you know you can do it. It's then they've come to me and been like, oh my God, my mum let me do, you know, fashion textiles, or I'm wearing a top with like a African woman on it. And that's changed their point of view. It's just been like, way more rewarding than I thought. So I feel like when we do it, we always have to have that responsibility. We have that at the back of our heads that we want women that look like us to wear it. So we have to make sure that we're speaking to them, but also we're trying to change this perception of a culture or a people or a textiles or a region of textiles and their artisans. And I think then that forever means that the work is always a little bit more deeper.
I think that's so beautiful because in a way you're kind of tying the past, you sitting with your mom and sewing to the future, as in looking at this business through the lens of your son.
Yeah, and he's my biggest fan, so he's always like, I think you're so great, and so I have to make sure I am great.
So you're like the fifth Beatle.
No, he definitely thinks I'm not I'm not that cool.
Okay. Well,
he doesn't play around with that.
Fatuma, I cannot thank you enough for doing this.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure talking with you and meeting with you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Please give my best to Laurinda.
Yeah.
We missed her here today.
Oh, thank you. You're building such an amazing empire yourself. And I think telling these stories are going to definitely inspire people. So we thank you for being able to produce this kind of content.
Our pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you're enjoying and are learning from this podcast, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. A great zero-cost way to support us is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you are feeling extra generous, it'd be great if you could leave a comment or feedback on our Apple Podcast or YouTube pages. Or you could email your comments and feedback to me directly at rahul@disruptivebusinessnetwork.com. That's RAHUL at disruptivebusinessnetwork, all one word, .com. Finally, a big shout out to our producer Dan Scahill for his work on the keys and to Vashti Civil for writing the original music for our theme. Until next time, this is your host, Rahul Sones, signing off. Bye.